Every once in a while, someone gets a feeling they can't explain. It's not fear or nerves, it's something deeper and darker. Now, because we all have busy lives, most people brush those things off to the side. But what if it's not just a feeling, and actually a future disaster that's about to happen? Welcome to Scary Mysteries, and thanks for tuning in today. This one's for all the believers out there that there are things beyond our understanding. Here are 5 terrifying premonitions that came true. Number 5. Hither Green Rail Disaster. On the night of November 5th, 1967, the 9:43 p.m. express train from Hastings to Charing Cross left the coast carrying over 300 passengers headed back toward London. It was a quiet Sunday ride as the weary travelers were headed back to the city after a weekend of escape. Most were dozing off or reading papers or watching the dark cruise by rain-streaked windows. But a few days earlier, a man named Alan Hencher, a telecommunications operator from Lancashire, had been losing sleep over something he couldn't explain. Hencher was known for something strange, and he claimed to have premonitions. And according to his friends, sometimes they came true. He'd called in to the Premonitions Bureau, a small research project founded by psychiatrist Dr. John Barker, who was documenting cases of people who said they could sense disasters before they happened. In late October, Hencher phoned Barker in a panic. He said he'd seen, in vivid flashes, a train derailment somewhere in southern England, a major crash that would leave 49 people dead. And he didn't know when or where, only that it felt imminent. Now, Barker had been studying similar reports since the Aberfan mining disaster just the year before. That story, as a side note, was a massive coal waste tip, basically a mountain of mining debris that collapsed after heavy rain, sending a black avalanche of sludge down the hillside. It buried a school and several houses, killing 144 people, 116 of them children. In the days leading up to it, something strange happened. Dozens of people across the UK, especially children, reported premonitions about a dark wave or a school being buried. One 10-year-old girl, Errol Jones, told her mother about a dream where her classroom disappeared under something black. The next morning, she was one of the first victims. And so Barker logged Hencher's call about the train but couldn't act on it. And there was no proof, just a voice on the phone describing something awful he felt in his bones. And then, less than a week later, it happened. At 9:16 p.m., just outside Hither Green Station in southeast London, the express train hit a broken rail at about 70 miles per hour. The first 10 carriages jackknifed off the tracks. Passengers were thrown against metal and glass, and some were trapped under the wreckage. Others crawled into the night through twisted steel and smoke. When the rescue crews arrived, the scene was chaos. The firemen cutting through coaches, neighbors bringing blankets, and the injured crying out for help in the dark. And 49 people were killed and 78 more injured, making it one of the worst peacetime rail disasters in British history. The next morning, when the death toll hit the exact number Hencher had predicted, Dr. Barker called it one of the most chilling confirmations he had ever seen. Alan himself was devastated. He told reporters that he wished more than anything that he'd been wrong. Investigators later traced the crash to a crack in a rail joint, a small but significant issue that couldn't have been seen from the driver's cab. And there was no way anyone could have known what was coming, except, apparently, for Alan Hencher. And he continued reporting his premonitions to the Bureau for several years, but nothing ever matched the accuracy or the emotional toll of Hither Green. He said afterward that the visions never felt like insight, only like dread that refused to go away. And it's easy to dismiss stories like this, just coincidence or a lucky guess. But the details make it harder to ignore. That exact number, the timing, and the specific kind of event. Whether it was intuition, a subconscious connection, or something we don't yet understand, it raises an unsettling question. If someone tells you they've seen a tragedy before it happens, well, what do you do with that?
In 2 days, 92 people had died. It was a black weekend.
Number 4. The doomed flight. On March 10, 2019, Carol Karanja arrived at Bole International Airport in Addis Ababa with her mother Ann and her 3 children, Ryan, Kelly, and Ruby. And they were flying to Nairobi to continue a trip to Canada. And it looked like any family travel day, except it wasn't. And the week before the flight, Carol had told her father she had a bad feeling. She wasn't nervous exactly, which her dad thought might be the culprit. She just said her heart, quote, wasn't happy about the trip and that something felt wrong. Still, she went. The plane the family boarded was Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, a Boeing 737 MAX 8. The takeoff was 8:38 a.m. local time, and there were 157 people on board. Within minutes after takeoff, radio calls showed the crew fighting against the aircraft. Witnesses on the ground reported a climb, then a drop, then another climb, but there was nothing they could do. At 8:44 a.m., the jet went down near Bishoftu. And there was not a single survivor. News reached Nairobi, and in the chaos before the whole story had been pieced together, Carol's father tried her phone. And there was no answer, and his stomach sank. He later told reporters about what his daughter had told him, about how she didn't want to fly that day. And Carol had mentioned it several times, but like many of us would, just pushed on through. Unfortunately, it wasn't until after the fact that he realized what she was referring to. And perhaps Carol felt it in her gut so strongly because this tragedy wasn't just about her. The family lost 5 people in one morning: a daughter, a mother, and 3 children. As to how she knew, well, maybe it was because this wasn't exactly a random event. And the weeks that followed, investigators sifted through the records and followed the chain that had already started months earlier. In October of 2018, just 5 months prior, Lion Air 610, another 737 MAX, crashed in Indonesia minutes after takeoff. So, same exact thing. The common link was MCAS, an anti-stall software that could push the nose down if a single sensor misread the angle of the plane. Pilots could pull back, the system could push again. And that cycle shows up in the data on both of these crashes, so a faulty computer was to blame. Of course, none of that was visible to Carol at the gate or in the days prior. All she knew was a feeling she couldn't explain. A recovery at the site took days, and personal items turned up in the debris field: clothes, documents, pieces of passports. Identification relied on DNA mainly. The names were read out, country by country, and Kenya lost most citizens, and the Karanja family was called more than once. The model of this plane was grounded worldwide after this. Lawsuits followed, and Boeing faced criminal charges and settlements. Manuals were rewritten, and the airplane returned to service after changes in certification flights, all things we would expect. And the part that doesn't fit is the message Carol shared in the conversation she'd had before she left. Families remember those words because of how the morning ended. And it's not proof of anything paranormal, it's just a record. What she said, who she said it to, and what happened next. Number 3, London Calling. On June 3rd, 2017, just after 10 p.m., central London was busy the way it always is on a Saturday night. Among the crowd of people were two visitors from France, Christine Delcros and her fiancé, Xavier Thomas, both of whom were 45 years old. They had spent the day there sightseeing and headed toward the London Bridge to check out the view at night. And minutes before they reached it, Christine told Xavier she felt like she suddenly didn't want to go. They had had such a good day, and it wasn't that she was tired or feeling ill. It was deeper than that, a bad feeling that she couldn't shake. She suggested turning back or even taking another route. Xavier just put his arm around her as they kept walking. The city felt safe. It was late, but certainly wasn't empty, so that helped. At 10:07 p.m., a white Renault van, rented earlier that day, accelerated onto the London Bridge from the north and jumped onto the sidewalk, moving with purpose. It happened so fast that before anyone even had time to react, it cut through an entire path of people. Christine remembered the sound first, that engine pushing hard, and then the angle of the headlights coming off the road and into the bodies ahead. The van hit her and Xavier from behind, throwing her across the pavement. As she woke up in the chaos to pain and brightness, her left leg was broken and she had pelvic fractures, facial injuries, and bruises everywhere. Around her, first responders tried to make order from a crime scene that was moving, and people were rushing away from the danger, others moving towards it to help. And the attackers had abandoned that van, continuing on foot toward Borough Market, armed with knives and fake explosives. The driver and two men inside would be caught soon after. Karam Butt, Rashid Radoun, and Yusuf Zagbra were shot down. But by then, 8 people had been killed and dozens injured. And Xavier, well, he was missing. For days, Marine units searched the River Thames. The current below London Bridge runs fast, so anything that hits it moves downstream with speed. On June 7th, a body was found near Limehouse, several miles east. Dental records confirm what Christine already knew. Her fiancé had been thrown over the side of that bridge on impact. In the aftermath, while the UK launched multiple investigations that spanned years, another truth was starting to emerge through the Old Bailey inquest 2 years after the fact. And there, Christine testified under oath about the minutes leading up to the attack. In her own words, she said she had a premonition that something bad was about to happen and told Xavier she didn't want to go onto the bridge. She asked to turn back, and they didn't. Within minutes, the van hit them. Many people claim to having had these sorts of omens and premonitions, but obviously they're impossible to prove. This one carried weight, though, because of where it lived. Not in rumor or in a blog post, but in a courtroom. When she spoke at the inquest, she didn't try to explain the feeling she had. She only recorded it. What she said to him, when she said it, and what happened next. She was not trying to prove anything. The attack happened and the perpetrators didn't get away. It was just the way it happened. And there's no big lesson here, other than to trust your intuition. On that June evening, Christine Delcros knew something was coming, tried to turn away from it, but just couldn't. Number 2, the prophet of disaster. People in Point Pleasant didn't talk about Mothman like a creature, and they talked about it like a warning. The sightings clustered in late 1966. Same wings, same red eyes, same stretch near the old T&T area. A year later, the Silver Bridge collapses, taking multiple lives, and after that night, the reports stopped, at least in this part of the world. But what many don't realize is this story widens out and spans across the globe. Claims of a black, winged figure before Chernobyl in 1986, A similar report tied to the I-35 West Bridge in 2007. No proof that any of it was the same thing, but once you see the connections, it's really hard to ignore them. The first report of the monster came from two young couples driving near an old TNT storage area north of town. Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Millette. And it was late, around 11:30 p.m. on November 15th, when their headlights swept across a figure standing on the road. And they said it was tall, 6, maybe 7 feet, gray in color with huge wings folded behind its back. Its eyes glowed red in the beams, and when they swerved around it and sped up, it followed. They described it gliding, not flapping, keeping pace with their car at over 100 miles an hour before vanishing into the trees near town. The following day, the Point Pleasant Register ran the story with a headline that would stick for decades. Couples see man-sized bird, creature, something. From there, the sightings multiplied, and over the next year, dozens of residents said they saw it too, perched on rooftops, rising from the tree line and chasing cars. Some said it made a sound like a high-pitched hum. Others said it appeared before moments of panic, car crashes, power failures, sudden deaths in town. And people started calling it the Mothman, and somewhere along the line, the story stopped sounding like a monster tale and started feeling more like a warning. On December 15th of 1967, at 5:04 p.m., rush hour traffic was crossing the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio. The temperatures were just above freezing, and it was busy. Cars and trucks lined up nose to tail. And the bridge trembled under the weight like it always did, and then a single chain link in the suspension snapped. Witnesses said it sounded like a gunshot. In less than a minute, the bridge folded in on itself and crumpled into the Ohio River. And 46 people died in the chaos, and 2 bodies were never found. The tragedy ripped through the region. It was one of the worst bridge disasters in U.S. history at the time. Engineers later confirmed the cause was a small crack in a single eye bar, no more than 1/10 of an inch deep, a mechanical flaw that went unseen for 40 years. But for locals, it was something beyond that. It was a culmination. Because in the days before the collapse, people had reported seeing the creature again, hovering near the bridge and perched on its frame. And, strangest of all, after the disaster, the sighting stopped completely, as if it had done what it came to do and then left. So that was enough for some to connect the dots. And maybe it wasn't causing the tragedy, maybe it was foretelling it. And over the years, the pattern seemed to repeat. In '86, people in Chernobyl, Ukraine, claimed to have seen a large black bird with red eyes flying over the nuclear plant in the days leading up to the explosion. In 1999, reports came from Moscow before a building collapse. In 2007, just before the I-35 West Bridge disaster in Minnesota that killed 13, a few witnesses said they saw a winged figure on the riverbank. Now, there's never been proof, of course, no clear photos or an explanation that fits all the pieces, just a strange timeline that keeps looping back. Sightings, followed by fear, and then ends in some sort of large-scale disaster. In Point Pleasant, they built a statue of it, and polished steel wings spread wide in the middle of town, and every November, they hold a festival in its name. It's part folklore and part history. And maybe it was some sort of mass hysteria, or maybe a coincidence. But what if it was something else? Something the human mind recognizes before reality comes into focus? In that sense, the Mothman has come to represent a prophet of sorts, in places to serve as a warning of disasters to come. The only issue is, like most omens, you only truly understand them after it's too late. Number 1, the city that listened. You should always listen to your intuition, but most people don't. After all, it's an intangible feeling, so usually we explain it away, call it anxiety or imagination. But in early 1975, one city in China actually did listen, and it saved over 100,000 lives. Now, the story begins in Haicheng, a coal mining city in northeastern China, not far from the Korean border. The winter had been brutal that year, and snow stacked up high on rooftops, and streets were frozen solid. But beneath all that ice, something was changing. For months, strange things had been happening here. Small tremors rattled the ground almost daily, not enough to destroy anything, but enough to make people uneasy. The scientists kept track of it all, and so did the locals. Farmers, teachers, anyone really who paid attention to the earth. And then came the animals. Snakes everywhere were found frozen stiff. They had crawled out of the safety of their burrows, only to die in the snow. Why would they do that? Cows refused to enter their barns. They wanted to stay in the open, no matter how cold it was. Dogs could be heard howling nonstop at night, and chickens wouldn't lay. By February 3rd, the tremors had grown stronger. Cracks split open in the ice. Well water rose and fell without reason, and gas lines hissed under pressure. The signs were everywhere if you knew how to read them, and that's exactly what the scientists in Haicheng were trying to do. The State Seismological Bureau had already been studying the area, and by that day, they made a decision no one had ever officially made before. And they warned the public that there might be a serious problem. And through radio, loudspeakers, and local committees, residents were told to leave their homes and stay outside. Schools and factories were evacuated, and families huddled in courtyards, parks, and open fields, just waiting. And then, at 7:36 p.m., the ground erupted. A 7.3 magnitude earthquake ripped through Haicheng. Buildings folded, and barns crumpled to the ground, and power lines snapped in the dark. But because of the evacuation, most of the city's residents were already outside. The death toll was still high, hundreds, but in a city of over 1 million people, the number could have been catastrophic, and it wasn't. For once, the warnings had been heard. Then, just over a year later, the lesson came with a darker twist. On July 28th of 1976, just 200 miles away, the city of Tangshan shook under a 7.8 earthquake. It hit at 3:42 a.m. while almost everyone was asleep. There had been no warnings this time, no evacuations of any sort. When the dust settled, Tangshan was literally gone. Officially, more than 240,000 people died. Unofficially, the number may be closer to 650,000. One of the deadliest earthquakes in modern history. The two events became linked forever. Haicheng, the city that listened, and Tangshan, the one that never got the chance. The animals knew it from the start. And they didn't need instructions or forecasts, they just moved. And some even died trying to outrun what they felt coming. Humans haven't lost that sense. We've just buried it under noise, logic, distraction, and doubt. But every once in a while, that instinct breaks through. And when it does, it's worth listening to. So there were 5 terrifying premonitions that came true. That's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed it, well, check out some others, because we got a whole library of strange episodes for you to check out. We're always putting out new stuff, so remember to subscribe. Y'all stay safe out there, and I'll see you over in the next one.